Hey, Tech Futures. So energizing to be here with you, to learn with you, connect, and shape the future of business. I am super energized also to share the space and the stage with Leagh Turner, the CEO of Coupa. Leagh, prior to Coupa, was a co-CEO of Dayforce Ceridian and led multiple businesses at SAP and Oracle. She is recognized as one of 100 most powerful women in Canada and is my absolute favorite CEO to learn from and to follow. And so it's a pleasure to be here with you.
You say that to all people. I'm sure you do. And you should introduce yourself. Are you introducing yourself?
I can. I am a partner at Boston Consulting Group, and I lead our product management practice. And as you can imagine, lots of AI product innovation happens there. And it's been my pleasure to follow and partner with Leagh over the last few years.
Anybody wants to know how to navigate the world that we're in and all the complexity that we're dealing with should talk to Kamila. She's a remarkably good resource.
Yeah. Thank you. Happy to connect with many of you throughout the next few days. All right, let's dive in. So this session, Leagh, and audience, is about the new AI Playbook for ROI. And what we'll talk about is how, when deployed with specific intent, that ROI is there, and that it comes from customers, comes from your teams, and also from some shifting business fundamentals. And so I'm going to dive in, Leagh, and ask you why so many divergent opinions about the value of AI.
I mean, I think there's a whole host of reasons. First of all, I don't think it's like an overstatement to say that this is like the next industrial revolution. It's a really big deal. People need to think like revolutionary, not evolutionarily. And let's be honest, AI is not particularly well or consistently governed. It's a brand new paradigm. It's priced and packaged differently than people are accustomed to. We try to tackle it in use cases as opposed to thinking more comprehensively. As a result, we like constrain its use, and there's a whole host of reasons why this feels like new and kind of scary. And as a result, I think we're artificially constraining something that could be really transformative and will be really transformative. But right now, it's like we're sort of stepwising our way into something.
Yeah.
You?
You know, I think the tech is still nascent, and so it's new, and so it's just been 2 years that it's coming out, right? Yeah. And so all kinds of things are evolving, including the business cases and ROI. So I think that's one of the drivers behind that. And then I think we'll talk in a little bit about how the business fundamentals are being transformed, right? So you got to rethink your metrics. So when you deploy AI product, what you're measuring is quite different. Your new UX, UI is NLX, right? So natural language UX, UI. And so completely different set of paradigms apply. But I think the beginning of it all, and maybe this is the former Amazonian in me, is really the customer value that you generate, right? Yeah. Like, it's not about the spot solution, which is a lot of the use cases today. It's the end-to-end view of your customer and their business and understanding it. And so I'd love for you to talk about how you guys think about the value to your customers as well.
Yeah, I mean, the very first thing, let me just say one thing, which I kind of missed, which is, I mean, we build software and we take our software to our customers, and we have embedded large language models and we apply agents to that data. And sometimes it surfaces the wrong answer. And it's a very difficult transition to explain to a customer that technology that was once built to do one thing shows up, and the technology actually needs to learn and adapt. And as a result, it doesn't give the best answer out of the gate. And that can be very difficult for a customer to understand. They're not accustomed to the technology needing to learn. So when we talk about divergent views or lower adoption than perhaps we'd like, or use cases versus whole-scale business processes, it's often because it's not totally trusted. It takes time to earn the trust of the end consumer. And frankly, we face that. Our developers face that. Our engineers particularly face that. So product engineers, technical engineers, when we go to our customers and demonstrate our software, our customers have an organic reaction to the fact that the technology needs to learn. They feel constrained. And so this is something that we have to try and find our way through. It's a very different paradigm than the way that you used to build and release software in the past.
I love it that you're mentioning the pressure for all job families to really understand the broader context of the customer and what they're going through and be attuned to that. One rule of thumb that we follow, and I follow, and maybe others in the audience as well, is that if you don't understand the context, you can't have the trust of your customer. So no context, no trust.
Yeah.
And that context can't just be within the function. So Coupa, for example, works with chief procurement officers, right? You need to understand the context of the entire business of your customer. And the proactive posture that you take to win is actually understanding that, your customer 360, and then figuring out where you come in. I think the failure mode is the defensive mode, where you just say, well, where can I tag along AI into specific parts of the flow and sell that as a solution?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll just spend 1 minute explaining a little bit about what our company does. So we're a 19-year-old software company. We're currently privately held. We have about, I don't know, $1.5 billion on the top line. We're growing in sort of the mid-teens. And the value proposition that we offer to our customers is that we're effectively a trade network. We bring buyers, about 3,200 global multinational companies, and suppliers, about 10 million global suppliers, together into an infrastructure in which they can trade. The cool part about the company is that 19 years ago, the founders of the company, of which I was not one, chose to ask for permissioned use of their customers' data, which is a really, way ahead of their time. It allowed the company to gather about $8.5 trillion of transactional data. What is a transactional piece of data? It's like a purchase order, an invoice, a goods receipt. We know, as a result, in this trade network, who bought from whom, in what amount, at what price, in what jurisdiction, what their trade routes were, what suppliers they used, etc. And you can imagine that right now, during this time of massive global transformation in terms of trade routes, internationalism versus nationalism, being closer to your buyer or supplier, that we get to see a whole host of trends. And as a result of seeing those trends, we can take, I'll call it manual, laborious process out of this network and allow for matching to happen in a more autonomous way. You can't do that without leveraging huge stores of data and then effectively an AI workforce to be able to go across that data and create matching algorithms that couldn't have happened absent that technology. And so that's I'll call it, that's not a use case. That's a business process transformation. It requires a lot of belief. It requires people taking their human labor out of the mix and agreeing that they're going to use automation in order to drive their decisions. And those decisions ladder right up to profitability and revenue. And so there's a lot of trust required in the work that we do. And we're seeing people move along that curve in, I would say, incremental ways and now more exponential ways, certainly over the course of the last year.
And I love that you've been so leading in this space, that you dove right into it as the CEO, as Coupa, as the entire executive suite. So that's on the customers, is how you got to rethink your customer end to end and the value you're generating. And that's really one of the big contributors to the new ROI playbook. I want to pick up on the labor force, because that's one of the last things that you mentioned. And so you and I share this belief that, and I think our organizations do too, that AI human loop, that humans are the true differentiators. Why do you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, this requires imagination. If you wake up every day and you just want work to work the way that it always has, it's not going to work that way. And so, like, the unique human quality is imagination, being able to suspend belief of what currently is and imagine something that's different, which is why it really matters to like have human beings in the middle of like this very imaginary time. Secondly, I'll say I referenced the Industrial Revolution. I actually really mean that. I don't mean it again, since like hyperbole. But like economic historians would say that the Industrial Revolution was the greatest time of growth and transformation in all of humankind. And we saw massive growth in population, in the speed of acceleration of the population, in the per capita wealth, in the ability for like advanced nations to create more lucrative jobs, to put people to work doing things that were more uniquely human. And I think that that's happening again. And I think that as long as we as leaders of companies can convince people that their work can be made more automated and that their jobs aren't being made redundant, that people will stay in this with their full imagination and leverage this technology to make their jobs more enriching and more uniquely human. Nobody wants to be doing labor-intensive manual work. They want to do work that is uniquely differentiated. And I think we got to find our place in that.
I'll pick up on that and share a couple of thoughts on
Please.
On why we see, especially as BCG organizations, not succeeding and those that are succeeding. Like, what are the kinds of things that are human differentiators? So what you're talking about, Leagh, is creativity and problem solving. A lot of it is diversity of opinions in the room, right? Bringing that to the table. Humor. You and I talk about how that's uniquely human. And I think there's also context and understanding the context of the job that is uniquely human. What tends to succeed in organizations, especially at scale, right? That's BCG, Boston Consulting Group, works quite a bit with larger enterprises. I'll share a few rules of thumb. So one is you deploy one tool that applies to all of the enterprise. So there is this communal spirit. Let's say it's ChatGPT. From there, what you do is you really think about augmenting entire workflows and rethinking them to figure out where the tools would apply rather than just going off the market and saying, oh, sounds like there's a really awesome tool for engineers and for product managers and for salespeople, let's go. I so far don't subscribe that AI will replace humans. And I think the belief here is that AI is going to be a tool, not a colleague to you as a human. And you might debate me, and many of you in the audience would question that. But even in the Valley, I'll give an example. So Cognition Labs created Devin, which is one of the engineering co-pilot tools. Their initial posture, even 6 months ago, was that you could replace your engineering workforce by hiring a $20,000 a year license, which is AI co-pilot, right? And since then, they too have changed their posture, where AI is one of the teammates, one of the helpers, because what we're realizing, even in engineering, that vibe coding is a dream. Yes, it's helpful to have a tool, but coding and thinking through architecture and backend and connecting the dots is actually a really, really hard technical problem. And so seeing the Valley change the posture a bit is actually reassuring before we get into these panic modes and start asking the questions, which a lot of our clients and companies do, of like, should I be not hiring anymore? Should I be reducing certain headcount in certain job families? And so that's a little bit about humans and how to view them or how I view them.
How do you think about lead? I'm curious. This is a technically savvy audience, and every single one of these people is going to get up and go back to their place of work and try to inspire people to embrace some degree of change, regardless of where on the AI continuum you think that AI lives relative to like the way that we've done things previously. What can people do? What can the leaders in this audience do when they go back to work to inspire people to embrace this? How do you think about that when you talk to companies?
I think reassure your people that you're not looking to replace them with AI, and that the context that they have and their human skills that are specific to your context as a company really, really matter, and show them how. right? And then encourage them to look end to end through their workflows to sort out what actually is going to be helpful to them, right? And then I mentioned one, which is sort of galvanizing and inspiring, just one tool. So whether it's Gemini, GPT, something else, just make it one so that everybody is using it. And then Leagh, you and I talk about how you need to train your executives as well.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and so I'll give an example. I was chatting a few weeks back with the head of Microsoft AI in Japan. And what Mickey was telling me is that she has these private training sessions for CEOs and C-suites of lots of Microsoft customers, because that's very much needed for the executives to catch up with the labor force and the front lines.
I mean, I'll tell you, we did exactly the same thing in our own company. We employ about 3,500 people, plus or minus globally. And our executive management team is like 8 people. And in order to be able to lead people through change, we did exactly that. Like, we have deployed one standard stack of technology across the business. And that company was gracious enough to spend some time with us trying to help the executive team get up the curve so that we can encourage people to leverage technology in the way that they worked. We all begin thinking that we're cheating, but what we realize is that we can move much faster to decision if we only use some kind of auxiliary help.
Yeah. So far, we talked about customers and really understanding your customer's business and their ROI and how you're influencing it as part of your ROI recalculation. We talked about the labor force. Let's talk about the fundamentals of the business and how it's changing. So lots of change globally of all kinds, geopolitical, lots of change within tech. The rules of SaaS are being rewritten and technology generally. And then the AI tech is evolving very rapidly. Yet, Leagh, you're very enthusiastic. You see AI as the opportunity creator. Why is that?
I mean, I don't know if this is like a on the fringe point of view, but my point of view is quite simple. And that is that this is, as I said, as big a transformation as like on-prem to cloud. I think that we see in our customer base, and virtually, everybody knows this, the ERPs, large scale ERPs, there's really only 2 of them globally, are going through a major migration. People call it the ERP super cycle. And what we're finding is that the ERP is thinning out. The implementation of an ERP is much lighter weight than it would have ever been in the past. The application layer is thinning out. And there's really only 2 emerging technologies in the future. One is data management, and the other is UI UX. And if you can find yourself into a career that values either of those 2 things, you probably have a lot of longevity in this period of technical transformation. And so that's what we're finding. As I said, the cool part of being able to work at the company that I do is that we have this unbelievably large proprietary data set. What we're doing is going back and thinning out our own application layer and building a really engaging UI. And then people can be really creative with the data that we offer them and make their own decisions as a result of that data, as long as they have a way to be able to engage with it. And frankly, we're seeing that across the entire industry. How about you? You see more of this than I do. I get to see one company. What do you see?
On the business value, I see in the Valley that the VCs will not just invest in companies anymore that create a really smart and swanky application layer, because the new thesis for the companies of 10 years from now is to do the connection, to create a connection that you're talking about, which is my application layer, my UX UI has to tie to some sort of underlying data and insights and intelligence. And so that's a really powerful hypothesis there. I see the rules of the business changing. Again, I mentioned earlier that the metrics that you use to measure your successes are no longer. So rules of 40 and 60 are getting rewritten. We don't know exactly what they are, but will be something quite different. And then on the business fundamentals, Leagh, there's one other thing that you actually taught me to think about, and Coupa did, which is this power of, or the force of resiliency. Right? It sounds very nebulous on the surface, but it means something very real. So like we just talked about data and the application layer and how it's probably the revolution the size and the magnitude of the Industrial Revolution, but there's also this bit around resiliency that you have insight into. Like, what does that practically mean, and why does this matter to the audience here?
I mean, I'll say this, everybody knows this fact, but of the S&P 500, 100 companies did not release forward-looking earnings in this last quarter. 1/5 of the S&P 500. Why? Because they can't predict what's going to happen in their business as a result of like the rate of change. So you have massive geopolitical change, you have macroeconomic impact, you have technology transformation, you have like changing biases and decisions all the time. And as a result, if you're a company, like, it doesn't matter whether you manufacture something or you're part of their supply chain, you literally cannot predict the profitability impact on your business as a result of all of these forces. So when you talk about resiliency, I think about how do you continue to deliver predictable results to a market that is unforgiving, it is unrelenting. The market doesn't say it's okay if you don't release forward-looking earnings. They punish you for it. And so the single most important thing you can do is figure out how to adapt to that as quickly as possible. And we get a lens into like this changing trade flow where people are like, hold on a second. I used to source goods from a different continent because they could be provided at a different rate or speed or price. And now I'm going to source more locally as a result of my ability to be able to predict the inbound volume that I need and be able to deliver it to my customer at a predictable price. And these are phenomenon that we have not seen since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Like, it's a dramatic change, and the degree of like agility and resiliency has sped up. And you can't get that without data and your ability to get access to it. You just simply can't.
And you see AI as the unlock. And I know
question.
that the reason Coupa's vision is to power the future of trade, right, is because of that you actually are deploying AI to help make businesses more predictable for your customers.
That's right. And I'll say just like a little stat, over the course of the last 6 weeks, we have seen in our data store, I said we have $8 trillion of transactional data that we've captured over 19 years. We have never seen anything like this before. 32% of the suppliers that were leveraged by our buyers over the course of the last 6 weeks are new, meaning had never been leveraged by this buying community before in the 19 years that we've been capturing data. What does that mean? That means that there are companies out there who have brand new opportunities to a market that they never would have had an opportunity to in the past as a result of the fact that the like climate is changing and people's appetite for sourcing is changing.
And what I'm taking away is that the supply chain is something that everybody, no matter what your role is in the audience, should be thinking about, because it is going to change the economics and ROI of your entire business. And AI will play a role in that too. All right. Let's make a couple of things super practical for the audience. As I connect and telepathically read the minds. And so you talked a lot about data. You have as Coupa, the luxury of access to $8 trillion worth of transactions and 19-year history. Some in the audience might be starting companies or working for startups. And so what do I do if I'm a company that doesn't have the treasure trove of data?
Yes. I think the very first thing you can do is focus on the easiest win. We often try to solve really big problems. Sometimes the easiest problems to solve are those that like are at the fringe and are relatively easy to solve, leveraging technology. And I think that like as technologists, as I said, we want to solve big problems, solve little problems and solve them really quickly and prove that you can get to value. I think data really matters. I think like permissioned data that can be like unique and distinct and clean and structured really matters. The reason that people are afraid and moving slowly into embracing this new technology is because they lack trust. because there may not be security or governance, as we discussed, in the ways that there has been historically. So capture data, like that really matters. So start on the fringe, start with easy stuff, prove you can get to value, and capture data. Data is the absolute key. And if you can do that and you can amass it faster than other people, and it can be high trust, people will embrace your technology and the work that you do. I think that what do you say when people ask you the same question?
When startups ask me this question, because you have the luxury of moving faster, I share this rule of thumb, which is that your team should be wowing itself every week. And if it's not, you're not moving fast enough on the data that you're collecting and getting insights out of.
Yeah.
And so adopt that. And then the other thing that I say, this is true for startups or larger companies alike, is that there is a very powerful figure emerging in your customer base, and that's the CIO and the office of the CIO. We're seeing them as blockers very often. And the reason they're the blockers isn't just because they're worried about data security and privacy or the cost that might be accrued by the company as a result of bolting on additional AI vendors or solutions, but because they actually don't trust that you understand their business of the company well. But that's like a new segment to really obsess over. And I know Coupa does quite a bit. And so I don't know, Leagh, if you have any thoughts whether CIOs matter and how you win them over.
I think like maybe I'll say, I have a fundamental belief, I think we all do if we're technologists, that a CIO is like a creative destructionist, right? They really are. They come into a company that was once business process ran one way, and they say, I think I can think of a better way to do that by replacing the way that we did it with something new, and that can allow us to grow faster or be more profitable. And so I think this is an unbelievably willing audience that is trying to protect the company from falling down. And if you can convince them that they can do it relatively safely and stepwise, they will go with you. I think that they're the coalition of the willing if you can build it. So my advice is like, get in there and really embrace it, dice it up, get into the difficult conversations, and those people will really help you.
All right, I'm going to recap because we're up on time. So we talked about sources of value and ROI in the age of AI. We talked about three sources. So one is customers, right? And understanding the ROI of their businesses before you worry too much about your own. We talked about talent and uniquely differentiating human things on your teams, not just globally specific to humans, but within your teams, within your companies. What is the true human differentiator and how to deploy AI at scale and successfully? And then we talked about the business model shifts, right? The concept of resiliency that everybody should really care about in the audience, the data collection and insight efforts, and just the full economics of every business.
So here's
shifting
the
the result.
All the greatness.
All right. Anything else to add?
No, you're awesome. Thank you very much for spending the time with us.
All right.